Hey everybody, if you're new to the channel, welcome to In Pursuit of History, and if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Today we'll be reviewing the Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin and Other Writings. Here. First portion of this book is the unfinished, yes, unfinished, Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, who lived from January 17th, 1706 to April 17th, 1790, as well as the title implies, some of his other writings from throughout his life. The majority of which would ultimately become his autobiography. The first portion of that was actually not intended to be his autobiography, but was a collection of letters he had written and were kept and preserved, thankfully, that did pertain to certain aspects of his life. The last few chapters of the autobiography were as well written by Benjamin Franklin himself, but were actually intended on being a part of a autobiography that unfortunately he was never able to finish. Now, the reason I have chosen to read this book and ultimately do this review is because I've always found Benjamin Franklin a rather interesting character among the founding fathers of America. Coming from humble beginnings, he would accomplish a great deal in his life, starting out as a printer, where he would earn a majority of his money and made most of his living, matter of fact. He'd also be a scientist, a diplomat for what would become the United States of America, as well as a bit of a philosopher. Much of what he is known for, including being a scientist and a philosopher, he was actually self-taught. He never attended a university, which makes it all that the more impressive, in my opinion. I do not plan on going into much detail in this review as far as his accomplishments go. Now, the book itself, I absolutely love it. This cover is of leather. I'm not entirely sure if it's real or not, but it has just a great feel. It's very flexible. Just really nice cover, to be 100% honest with you. I am normally a big fan of hardback books, but this leather cover may be one of my favorite materials for the cover of a book. The binding, it's not too stiff, but it's also not too flexible either, it's pretty good in between. It appears to be bound by string. Here on page 370 and 371, you can actually see the string binding. It doesn't appear to be the strongest binding. You can see how it's kind of torn just from general use a little bit, there. And I've only read this book once, so it's not that worn down. I believe if this book was used multiple times for research purposes, maybe you would start to have some page tearing due to it, due to that fragile string binding. That being said, the book does not lay completely flat, even toward the middle of the book. But it does not slam shut either. You may lose a page or two as far as your place goes, but overall, not too bad. The paper in this book, I found quite interesting, and I rather liked it. It does appear to be maybe to represent the parchment that it was probably originally, written on. You can clearly see the yellowish color, as well as it is of a nice thickness. It is kind of a thicker paper. I rather enjoyed. It's just really nice overall aesthetically, from cover to paper. It's actually a really nice, really well put together book. The print in the book is not the smallest I've ever seen, but it is not particularly large either. I have no real complaints about the size of the font. Okay, the price of the book, when I bought it new, this has been a few years ago, it was actually priced at $14.99 US dollars. It is actually the exact same price as of right now on Amazon. There is a hardback version as well now, for $25.98 on Amazon. So overall, I will say the price is not bad at all. This book is 375 pages long from front to back. Not the shortest autobiography, but also it does contain his other writings as well. So it's probably about almost half and half of autobiography plus other writings. Just gives you more of an insight into the mind of the writer, and I thought it was just really interesting hearing his views on certain subjects, which we'll get to here in a second. Publisher of this book is Canterbury Classics. For those of you who are not familiar with this publisher, they primarily reprint older texts such as this. This publisher brings new life to these books with updated covers as well as illustrations. And it's just the first page there, not even really the first page, it's just the inside of the cover. There are small illustrations throughout the book, such as this one. They all pertain to what the writing is about during that chapter. Another one here. I particularly like them. As far as the author goes, well, Benjamin Franklin. It is in fact an autobiography. So not too much to say there, other than the fact that, as mentioned in the book itself, it has been edited multiple times, originally by some of his family. I do, however, believe that the publisher has issued the most authentic version of the book as possible. There's a few notes here and there where the editors of this book have compared prior editions before they are being edited, and they make note of it. Overall, this book is, again, an autobiography, so not much to be argued there as far as academic authenticity or anything like that, or any kind of arguments really to be made about the contents of the book. I do believe the autobiography was well written, especially, again, because Benjamin Franklin was a self-educated man for the most part. Like most people during the time period, I believe he went through a few years of grammar school just to learn how to read and write. In terms of the other writings that make up the last portion of the book, there were several that I found very interesting, such as a few notable mentions, as in the Silence Do-Good letters, which were written in 1722. Excuse me, I have to read it off my notes here. These were written by a teenage Benjamin Franklin who secretly was writing letters pretending to be an elderly woman, slipping him to his brother, who owned a print shop, who Benjamin Franklin actually worked for, in Boston at the time. These were really interesting because he brings up issues you don't typically hear about during that period of time, such as women's rights. A dissertation on liberty and necessity, pleasure and pain, which was written in 1725, which is largely a philosophical work that proves to me to be rather thought-provoking. I will add that I'm not the biggest fan of philosophy. I'm not saying I don't like it. It's not my area, but it was rather well written, and I found it very fascinating. Another work that was worth mentioning in here was the Proposals Relating to the Education of Youth in Pennsylvania, written in 1749, where Benjamin Franklin essentially gives his thoughts on how the youth of the time should be educated. I will add, I agree with most of what he proposes. A couple other honorable mentions would be the Morals of Chess, written in 1779, and the Disapproving and Accepting of the Constitution, written in 1787, which he wrote directly to our first president, George Washington. One thing I will add is I did enjoy that the editors did not go back and correct any of the spelling that was used in the book. There are plenty of spelling errors throughout the entire book. However, there was not necessarily a standardized way of spelling during that period of time. For those you do know, the invention of the printing press did in a certain effect, start to standardize spelling. Now, obviously, this printing press was introduced way before the time of great Benjamin Franklin. However, as the printing of books and the circulation of books became more and more frequent and popular, and people read, essentially how the people that were publishing the books spelled things became the standardized way of spelling. So the standardized way of spelling during the time of Benjamin Franklin is not the same as today. For example, Pennsylvania is spelled Pensilvania throughout the entire book. Obviously, that's not the way we spell it today. In conclusion, I loved this book. Everything from the cover to its contents I found to be delightful, truthfully. For anyone who's a fan of early American history, especially the founding fathers of America, I highly recommend this book, and I give it a 10 out of 10. So, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any more book reviews. I do have a few more in the works. Hopefully I'll pick these back up. I didn't do too much of it over the summer. I do plan on trying to get at least one done per week, maybe every other week from here on out. So, thanks for watching. Have a good one.